Hi, welcome to Notes on Resilience. I'm your host, Manya Chilinsky, and my guest today is Joey Drolshagen. He's a coach and a consultant, and we talked about living a life of passion, how to empower employees, and really a lot about mindset and what that has to do with resiliency. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Joey Drolshagen. I knew I was going to get that wrong. And Joey, before we dive into who are you and what do you think about resilience, I want to know, if you could have a superpower, what would that be?
Yeah. And it's so awesome to get to be here with you today, Manya. I'm really excited for this conversation. And if I could have a superpower, it would be that I could fly.
Nice.
And honestly, like recently, because I'm really big into stepping through our fears. And I just 2 weeks ago took my first run off of a 2,000-foot mountaintop with a hang glider.
Joey, that sounds very scary.
So I'm actually getting to open that up. And, I've had my pilot's license, so I've gotten to fly planes, but you're closed in this cockpit and you got the sound of the motor and all that stuff. And the hang glider, you're literally sailing through the air. I mean, it's so incredible, Manya. I can't explain how much. So that would be my superpower, is to be able to fly.
I think it already is your superpower. You definitely can.
It feels like I'm heading that way.
You are heading that way. You can definitely fly more than I can. I require a pilot and somebody else's airplane. So, well, that's awesome. I think a lot of people would join you in wanting to have that particular superpower. Just the freedom.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's freedom. I've always been really attracted to eagles. I've done a lot of photography, things like that. And it's that whole mindset. And it's really like what I teach clients and things like that. It's about soaring. Like our life, we're intended to soar. Each one of us in our own way, utilizing our own unique gifts and everything else. And that's what it does for me.
Wow. I feel like that shows up in people's dreams a lot, that often in dreams, people are flying places. So it seems just there's some connection to the core of us that we want to just get up and soar and be free.
Well, and we're intended. That's how we're intended to live. But these things get in the way and block it off and cut off our belief in ourselves and all this other stuff and everything that hopefully we get to get into some today and stuff. But that's what it is that's our innate abilities, is to soar in this life.
Oh, I like thinking about it that way. Thank you. Uh-huh. So now that we know already so much about you and your superpower, can you just tell us, who are you and what do you do? And how are you in a place to be thinking about resiliency or compassion?
I coach. I work with individuals, organizations, businesses, realtors, and people. And it's really about tapping into that soaring. It's about tapping into our unique gifts and bringing that outwardly and living in passion, living in excitement, living in making it beyond what we even expected we could make it to, what we could achieve in our lifetime, but not doing so, Manya, where we're trading off our family and trading off our friends and trading off our healthy personal life in the way of doing so. Okay. So I grew up in a very low-income family in Detroit, Michigan, and blue-collar family with 5 kids. My mom and dad worked themselves to exhaustion and beyond. And that was modeled to me. So when I got to my adult years, I followed that same process, that same conditioning that we all do, unless we do something different. And at 22 years old, I had this awakening moment, but it was that in that dream state kind of where it came to me, that intention of my life is to inspire, motivate, and lead millions of people to living better lives. But I was struggling myself. I was like, well, how the heck am I going to do this? I was stuck in a job and things like that and stuff. And I became a student of the works that I do today. And it just kept going. So what I like to tell people is I was the guinea pig in all my experiments building into the works that I do today. And over the last 10 years, I have served almost 1,000 clients and people from all walks of life, and helping them to achieve incredible feats into their life with less, and do so with less effort. And the testimonials are just raving as far as like the breakthroughs and the things people achieve. And throughout my process, I've developed a method called the SMT method. or the subconscious mindset training. And it all works on the total mindset, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the programming in the subconscious mind. And one of the things a lot of people don't realize is it's our subconscious mind that triggers our brain waves as far as what actions we take and what actions we don't take, which is why somebody that's coming from a level of conditioning with fear, doubt, and worry typically have a really hard time taking those actions to get them out of fear, doubt, and worry. Mm-hmm. And when we understand the entire model of it, our subconscious mind, that conditioning that we've received since birth, determines how far we can go in life and where that limit is. The good news about that is at any time we can shift that conditioning and open up more availability, potential, possibilities in our lifetime.
You know, what you're talking about when you're talking about mindset and how people can sometimes get stuck, that sounds a lot like resiliency.
Very much so. You know, one of my favorite things on resiliency is, I don't know if you've watched all the Rocky movies with Sylvester Stallone, but yeah. I've seen every one. It's like I grew up on, a Rocky child. But the last one, I think it was Rocky Balboa, the last one he did, and he was talking to his son. And his son was blaming the world for his problems. He was a victim. He was this, he was that, and Stallone said to him, life isn't about how many punches you can give. Life is about how many punches you can take and keep moving forward. And just in telling you that right now, I get goosebumps because that really is what it is. And when we start understanding those punches we're getting are not intended to move us back or hold us short of or anything else. The intention of those things, Manya, is to gear us up and to empower us to go through that. But we so often get to a point of tired, exhausted, so used to that conditioning that we just allow it to determine what we can do in life. So we actually become more resilient by the challenges that we face, if we so choose to.
Yes. And, a lot of things happen to an individual in our lives. Big T traumas, little T traumas, just life can be exhausting on its own. And what do you say to people who are really struggling? Maybe something has happened in their lives. Maybe they've experienced a trauma, and they're really struggling to see that they actually are resilient. How can you help people who are in that zone, really struggling to even be able to see past what's happening to them?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the very first thing it takes is what I call a beginner mindset. Right? Because some people are so entrenched in their conditioning. They're so entrenched in those things happening. They're so entrenched in being a victim that they won't see it any other way. And so one of the things it took me a couple of years of coaching to realize is what I do isn't necessarily for those who need it. It's for those who want it. Mm-hmm. It's for those people who say, I can't stand living like this another day. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so somebody that's in that mindset where they're open, then I can start helping identify with them their conditioning. I can start helping them identify how the things that they've been through can strengthen them. I have a 16-week program specific to people who have been divorced. And we all know people who have been through divorce like 5, 7, 10. I know people at 12 years, and they still, when you see them, all they talk about is that divorce still. It's like they're stuck in that place. Mm-hmm. They're stuck in what was done to them and the dishonor and all that and everything else and stuff. And I don't judge anything. So I don't judge that, but I created a 16-week program called Struggle to Soar. And it's taking all of that emotional upset that comes with divorce, all that disappointment, all that high emotional energy, and utilizing it as fuel to catapult them beyond what they could have achieved without that divorce. Right. And people have incredibly opened up their life by using it that way. And so that's why I say, and it goes right along with resilience, when we look at the things that happen to us in life, and I have my own stories upon stories upon stories of really big upsets in my life, So in each one of those, some of them early on, I got stuck in being the victim of those things. And I didn't get a whole lot out of that. But as I utilized and started learning these tools and implementing them in my life, all of a sudden, the divorce that I went through launched me into breaking away from the model that I was conditioned to live within, and doing what I'm doing now and having this impact and speaking on stages in front of thousands and leading groups and individuals and organizations to opening up beyond what they could have achieved otherwise.
Right. Well, so I myself am a survivor of mass violence, and I definitely was at a point in my life where I could not have heard your message. I was
Right.
mired in the trauma and still trying to figure out what's happening to me, and eventually got to a point where a message like yours would have gotten through. But when you're thinking about people who aren't quite at that point yet, they can't really hear that message because they're still struggling. Yes. And not that they're stuck in being victims, but they are victims. What do you say to folks like that to take the next steps, and what would you do to help them?
Yeah, sometimes the best I can do is encouragement. It's leaning into somebody and letting them know, first off, it's an association with and things like that. Like, I can't tell you I've been through that. I've been through my own, walk and things like that and everything and stuff, but associating with that and understanding where you're at with that. And then offering even some hope of the possibilities in front of you. Mm-hmm. Even in that state, if somebody's leaning into you and really feeding into you spiritually and things like that and telling you, it's not always going to be like this. You're here right now and you need to be here right now, but it's not always going to be this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just encouragement like that.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, you talked about the quote from the Rocky movie, and that kind of leads me to think, I think about resiliency in a couple ways. If you ever hear me talking about it, sometimes I say that I have a don't completely hate relationship with the word resilience. So I think our personal resilience is a very important quality that we have, and working to build on it. And we all have it, but we don't always, we may not feel that we have it. But I also think that, institutional support from the organizations that we're part of, and whether or not they support people's resiliency is a really important piece of our resiliency. So I'm curious how you think about that other level of resiliency, not the personal side, but what do our organizations owe us, if they owe us anything?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things when we're really in a shift right now. I mean, we had COVID and all that and everything else, and people decide, I don't want to go to his office every day and stuff like that. But we have that other side of it as well. And I work with a lot of organizations, companies, even governments down here in South Carolina with helping people with all the staffing issues and everything. And really more than ever, this is a time when the staffing, the employees, the team that you have working for you has to be an investment as a business owner. You have to invest in them. And it's not just money and paycheck, but you have to invest in them, because if you're not building them up, if you're not empowering them into their own level of leadership within the organization, you're tearing them down. By not doing it, you're tearing them down. But one of the biggest things with that, Manya, is empowering the people on your team to build that. I remember one time in corporate America, I worked in corporate for 28 years. I was a vice president helping companies in bankruptcy back into profitability. And I remember one time I made this huge mistake and I was really nervous. And this is later in my career. And I went to the CEO and I go, listen, I got to fess up to something. And I told him exactly what happened and everything. And I thought, man, this could be the kind of thing companies could let you go for, And he looked at me and he goes, you know what, Joe, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. What better way to build resiliency on your team than to let people make mistakes and help them learn that lesson from that mistake to grow into higher levels in their life? If you're not supporting the resiliency of your team, then you're breaking it down. It's one or the other. There's not an in between. And it can't be ignored anymore in the way the world is today.
Yes. I mean, do you see in your work, do you see a real change with COVID and how people are thinking about mental health and resiliency for employees?
Oh, very, very much, very much. And it's showing up. They may not be identified as such, but it's showing up in all the staffing issues, because a lot of people don't even know that's what they're looking for.
Right.
So they won't say it that way. But when you look at the fact that people just not coming in, or people, the way it's going with staffing right now and stuff, that's a huge part of it. And what I look at, and the corporations I work with, the companies I work with, the leadership programs I run and things like that, what I look at is building that resiliency from the leadership throughout their entire team. Mm-hmm. as you build that, you've more empowered that team. Now you're bringing people in that want to be there more.
Right, right. Well, what do you think is like the most important action or policy maybe that an organization can take to support resiliency?
One of the things they can do is the biggest thing that I think of is empowerment. When you empower your employees, you have your senior management, then you got your management, and then your leaders, and then your, employees. And every level of that, there's empowerment. Every level of that, there really is leadership. Mm-hmm. And when you let your employees take on, like, be the leader of their area and lead, and empower them to do so in that area, you're building resiliency throughout your entire organization.
Excellent. And, you, through your work as a coach and with corporations, I'm sure you have, experienced people at all phases in their lives and what's going on with them. And what's an important lesson that you think you've learned about resilience or maybe compassion through your work?
So there's things, right, with our conscious mind and stuff like that. Where we put our focus is where we're putting our attention, which is where we're placing our intention, right? So when I first started coaching and somebody would say something like, I don't have enough money to pay my bills, or they'd say some limiting thought like that, I would dive on them. And I'd be like, you can't talk like that. You can't say those words. You can't, this and that and stuff. And later on, what I learned is I made it really hard for my clients to make any shifts in doing that.
Okay.
So what I do today is I let them go partway into it and I ask some questions about that and hopefully turning it and stuff. But then at some point we address the fact that we want to change those words. We want to power up those words and having compassion that the person is where they are. There's a reason they're coming to see me. If they knew how to do all this stuff, they wouldn't need me. Right. So it was really bringing that into alignment and applying more compassion over my desire to see people change their lives. The name of my company is IFGT Coaching, and the IFGT stands for It's Frickin' Go Time. And so I operate like that. What took me years to understand, my clients are implementing and bringing about breakthrough changes in their life in days and weeks now because of that. So I've always been about that. I wanted to get people changed quickly. I want to get them transformation. I want to get them breakthroughs. I want to get them empowerment quickly and stuff. But without the compassion, it's impossible to really fully do that.
Yes. Yes.
And the compassion is what brings that in. And so I can take that and I can apply that to relationships. And, I have a team that I work with, and I call them the dream team. And every person on that team is doing what they're passionate about doing.
Yeah.
And all I do is let them run. I let them own that portion of the business. And when they run into something, instead of telling them what to do to fix it, I'm a source to have that compassion towards, man, that sucks, running up against that and everything else. What do you think we can do? And then empowering them to come up with the solutions for that.
That's great. It sounds like you've taken that compassion and kind of meeting people where they are, not only for your clients, but in the way that you run your business as well.
Yeah. When I first started coaching, you asked that about somebody who's really in a tough spot. When I first started coaching, I wanted to help everybody. Anybody I ever ran across, I wanted to help, And so I would run into people and they'd be in that financial paradigm. They don't have enough money and things like that and stuff. And I would coach them for nothing because I so badly wanted to help people change. Right. And what I ended up realizing as a result of that is I can have compassion. I can lean into it. But there's certain ways I can do it that's only feeding the paradigm for the person. Mm-hmm. So in doing that for free, that's what I ran into. And people would get nothing. They were getting nothing out of the program. And it's because they weren't invested into it. Mm-hmm. And I started learning if somebody has to invest, it's going to be important to open up that lesson. It's going to be important to get on that coaching call. It's going to be important to apply this stuff because they're investing in themselves. And that was another area where I really learned that, where I let my compassion lead, and it wasn't as helpful to the people I was trying to serve as it is today.
Right. It sounds like you've identified, as you said before, helping people who are at a point where they know they need something different and they're reaching out to you to change and they're making that investment in themselves. And not everybody is at that point where they can do that.
Absolutely. You're right. And that's what the other thing I've done is, because I really do have this heart where I want to serve everybody, is this organization is set up where there's a 4-week self-study program. There's a group only. There's a 12-week, there's a 6-month, there's an executive 1 year. There's we've set it up where we can meet people where they are to start helping them. Mm-hmm. I do a group for pennies, almost dollars a month that allows them to be involved in the membership, in a membership, in a mastermind and all that, and start collecting, gaining these tools so that then they can do better. And then they can invest in doing the one-on-one. They can invest in going to the upper levels and things like that, and really getting the full gamut and everything else of the SMT method. So right. I've really developed the entire process of what I do to meet people where they are.
Yeah. I think that's an important key, is the meeting people where they are. And it sounds like some of the skills that you help teach people are some of the same kind of skills that we look back when we think about resiliency. But I guess, how would you define resiliency, or what are the skills or characteristics that you think are what make up a person's resiliency?
Okay, so I'm going to tie this in the way I believe it myself. Mm-hmm. I think it really ties into our spiritual connection, and it's a spiritual conversation.
Okay.
We have our humanness, we have our body, we have our arms, we have all the stuff we have human, but we're not human beings, really. We're spiritual entities having a human experience. Mm-hmm. And that's really where that strength to build resilience and things comes from, for me and every client I work with. And some people will call it God, some people will call it universal, some people will call it whatever they call it and things like that. So I don't define it for people. For me, it's God. And I tap into that, and that's where I build that resiliency. That's where, when I run into a wall, or like a love relationship that ends, and it's a true love relationship, and it ends because it needs to, and not because of the fighting and all that and everything. And you walk away from that, and that's more painful than the ones where there's upset. Mm-hmm. Because there's still love, that connection there and stuff, and it's having a place to turn to tap into, to gain that strength, to go through that and utilize that to strengthen me. Like with the Rocky thing, it's how many punches we can take and keep moving forward to move me forward in my life.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So
let me ask, because we're conversation here, would you agree with that? I'm interested in your thoughts.
I think of resiliency, I think similarly to you. I think it's our relationships, it's our ability to bounce back. And whether that is, some of us lean on our faith, some of us, that's not a particular factor. But I think, when I think about resiliency, I do also think about the role of our systems and institutions in supporting that. Mm-hmm. My personal experience was that when I first heard the word resiliency after being a victim of mass violence, I didn't think it applied to me. I thought, well, obviously I'm not resilient because I'm really suffering. And it was a real eye opener as I went through the process of healing to learn that, no, I'm resilient. Just, I was comparing myself to other people who had different skills or different relationships or different things in their resiliency toolbox that they could access.
And so often that's what we do, is we compare ourselves to other people. And let me ask you, without fully meaning it, but how often have you ever compared yourself to somebody else where you were the winner?
That's a great question.
Never, right? Right? We compare ourselves to people only to break ourselves down. That's part of that conditioning and those things I'm talking about. Yeah. But I fully agree with you. And then the other thing I used to get confused on is, if there's suffering, that means I'm not resilient. Suffering is part of the resilience. It's part of the rebuilding. It's part of that coming out at that next level. Without that suffering, one of the things I'm really big on teaching people, Manya, is we suffer not for the point of suffering. We suffer as long as we need to, in order to get the gold nuggets out of that discontent, to help angle us and guide us to what it is we do want. Mm-hmm. See, the things that happen in our life that we don't want, and different levels and everything else. I'm not, saying there's not worse things than others and things like that. But what's happening in that process is it's going, I don't want this. And it's helping us to define, what do I want then?
Yeah.
And that's part of what moves us through the suffering and moves us to a higher vibration of living when we start tapping into that.
Right. And that is the thing that can be so difficult to see or recognize at certain times in our lives based on what's going on. So it's a good reminder that
and the initial onset of something happening like that, it's impossible to go, right, okay, this is what I want. You know what I mean? that suffering is necessary because it's a grieving, it's a death of something that happened in that, and it's that grieving process, but it is part of the process not to be stuck in that, grieving forever.
Yes.
That there's a purpose in it. There's gold in that to help us to move forward.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned that it's a grieving process. So I think we don't necessarily think of that when you're in the middle of dealing with it. If you're not dealing with the death of somebody, which we understand that's grieving.
Right.
But after a trauma, for example, you are grieving.
Of course.
So I'm glad you brought that up. It's an important piece.
Yeah.
So Joey, what is giving you hope these days?
I have to tell you, I don't lean a lot into hope.
Okay.
Hope feels very empty to me.
Okay.
Instead, what I do is I live by my life by what I consider a dynamic vision.
Okay.
And every person I work with, we come out of the gate developing a dynamic vision of what life can look like. And I have an entire road mapping process to help people go through. And so it's that vision. It's that vision of impacting millions of people's lives that has me on this call with you right now. It puts me on stages in front of thousands of people. I've opened up a corporation called Life Ignited Institute where I certify other coaches in the works that I've done so that I get a bigger footprint that way. And it's that vision that keeps me driven and keeps me moving forward into that next level, that next vision, that next thing of what it's going to become as a result. So that's where I get the purpose for my life.
Wow. That does sound really powerful.
Yeah.
Nice. So, we're getting close to the time when we should be wrapping up. Although I could probably talk to you for hours, Joey. But
let's do it.
What is one question that you wish I had asked you?
Maybe a good question is why I'm so passionate about doing what I do.
Yeah. Okay. So, Joey.
Well, that just made your life easy, didn't it?
Exactly. Why are you so passionate about what you do, Joey?
You know why? Because I've watched my parents live that other side, and there weren't these tools, there weren't the great authors and all the stuff we have and everything around the works that I do today and stuff available to them. And I watched them suffer like that. And when I talk to somebody who's in that place of that suffering, and I know what that's like, I can connect, I have compassion towards it. I got to see it firsthand in my parents' lives, but also in mine. And it's like breaks my heart that, because what I believe at the bottom of all of this is each time one of us goes in and taps into those unique talents and gifts that we have, and they bring those outwardly, that they change the world in doing so. And that I get to be a part of that in people's lives is like, it's overwhelming to me that I get to be this in people's lives. And the work that you're doing right now, you get to bring this stuff out. You get to ask these questions, or you get to ask people what questions they should ask you, which is very clever. But you're having a mark on other people's lives with what you're doing. And I just really want to just take a second and celebrate you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I so enjoy having these conversations, and I learn so much. And I know that when people listen to the episodes, they're going to learn a lot too. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, though, I would love to know, what would you tell your 18-year-old self about either resiliency or compassion?
The one thing I would say is it's not always going to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a purpose for your life, and you have all the tools inside of you that will come out exactly when they're needed to fulfill that purpose for your life. And just spend your time enjoying who you are.
I like that. Spend your time enjoying who you are.
Yeah.
I think, tying that into what you mentioned earlier is that when we compare ourselves, we seem to only be comparing ourselves negatively to others. I think it's so human to look at our own faults and not enjoy where we are because we're trying to get someplace else.
Absolutely. And when you just said that, that's our conditioning in that subconscious, in that motherboard of the subconscious. That's what shows up in that voice we hear in our head over and over and over, telling us why we can't or shouldn't or don't have enough money or we this or that, or all the reasons why we can't step to that next level. It's all of our conditioning that does that. So when we understand what that conditioning is, when we shift that, which is literally retraining our brain waves to act differently, we can start opening up in very short periods of time, weeks. We can start opening up opportunities that we've never seen available to us before.
Yeah. Nice.
Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
I know.
I love it. I love it. So where can our listeners reach you, Joey?
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me, you can go to ifgtcoach.com. You can look at Joey, Joseph, Drolshagen all over social media. I'm all over. But the one thing is, if this resonated with you at all, like I'm very open. I love having conversations. If this is something that touched you, or if you listen to this and you went, this guy's full of BS, I'm okay with that too. You can reach out to me at coachwithjoey.com. And it's just one word, Coach with Joey, and then .com, and schedule a 10-minute conversation. We can jump on the phone and talk about what's going on. And like I said, even if you totally disagree with me, I'm okay with that. But there may be something in that conversation to help you in some way, shape, or form. And if that's possible, I'm willing to have that conversation.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so curious if anybody takes you up on the setting up a conversation to disagree with you. I love it.
I usually do have some people doing and so. Not so much the disagreement. A lot of times it's people who are like, man, how would you apply what you were talking about to this? And that I love doing that because I love getting people some tools and helping them move in that direction and start making that shift. And then during that call, it's only 10 minutes. So I don't do a sales call. It's not things like that or anything.
Right.
But if it does resonate, then I offer on the call a 1-hour free coaching session. And from there, we really get into the gamut of figuring out where you want to be, get you some tools to start bridging that. And then I talk to you about my programs and stuff like that. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we will put all that information in the show notes for everyone.
Okay.
And Joey, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And just thank you so much.
Well, this is such an honor. I'm really grateful I got to meet you and talk to you.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for listening. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. So if you'd like to learn more about me, Manya Chilinsky, I work with organizations to help understand how to create environments where people can thrive after difficult life experiences. And I do this through talks and consulting. I'm a survivor of mass violence, and I use my experience to help leaders learn about resiliency, compassion, and trauma-sensitive leadership, to build strategies to enable teams to thrive and be engaged amidst difficulty and turmoil. If this is something you want to learn more about, visit my website, www.manyachilinsky.com, or email me at manya@manyachilinsky, or stop by my social media on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks so much. Thank you for listening. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. So if you'd like to learn more about me, Manya Chilinsky, I work with organizations to help understand how to create environments where people can thrive after difficult life experiences. And I do this through talks and consulting. I'm a survivor of mass violence, and I use my experience to help leaders learn about resiliency, compassion, and trauma-sensitive leadership, to build strategies to enable teams to thrive and be engaged amidst difficulty and turmoil. If this is something you want to learn more about, visit my website, www.manyachilinsky.com, or email me at manya@manyachilinsky, or stop by my social media on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks so much. Talk soon.